Welcome to this week's episode of Weekly Spark, and this is the final episode for the month of February. So it's going to be the last piece that I do inspired by the Swan. And, to kind of look back, we did a piece that was inspired by the goddess Bridget around the beginning of the month for Imbolc. I did a piece that was inspired by the Hindu goddess Sarasvati. I also did a piece, let's see, here's Sarasvati. I also did a piece that was inspired by the William Butler Yeats poem. And the last two things that really sparked a lot of ideas for me were the fairy tales and folk tales of the Swan maidens. Also, there's the fairy tale of where the sister has to make all of the cloaks or shirts, spinning nettles into fiber, into flax, and then spinning them into cloth, weaving them into cloth. So there's that whole fairy tale, which takes place in Irish myth as well as in the classic kind of Grimm's and Andersen's fairy tales. But what I came up with today, I have a couple images. I have this great old reproduction of like maybe a game piece. I have an old illustration of Lohengrin from the medieval romances, who was the Swan Knight, a nice classic swan that can be done as a transfer. I have this I printed out, which is an Alphonse Mucha image, and it's not remotely swan-like, but it was completely captivating. A swan image here, some swan maidens bathing. You can see they've shed their swan skins and are bathing. So in that regard, the Swan Maiden is a lot like a Selkie, where she can take off that feathered cloak, as it were, and transform. This one's probably too big because I'm going to be working in this notebook today. Another thing that's said about Swan Maidens and Swan Cloaks is that it was a piece of clothing that the Valkyries had that enabled them to be invisible and to fly. So the classic image of a Valkyrie is here with the wings on the helmet. And so these women warriors were the choosers of the slain, and they would pick up the warriors that had died on the battlefield and take them to the Norse Valhalla, the afterlife, the afterworld. And so they're usually seen in that kind of Victorian image with the boob armor and the corset, and they have the trappings of the warrior with the shield and the spear, but they're still sexy pants with their boob armor. I love the idea of the Valkyrie being able to change form and to shed this maybe warrior persona, put on the feathered cloak, change into a swan, changing her form. And in doing a Google image search, I found this image. The artist's name is Bosch. It's so Art Nouveau. It's so visually linked in my mind to the work of Alphonse Mucha. Although her wings on her helmet are these very stylized pieces of her headdress, this totally works for me. And I'm going to pull the color palette out of this and work with this as my Valkyrie image. I have pulled some paper, like that's perfect. That might be too blue, too green. But I've pulled paper in some neutrals. I pulled out the paper because then to me it was a nod to the Wagner character of Brunhild in The Ring of the Nibelung, who was a Valkyrie who fell in love with, was it Sigrid? Anyway, you can look that up on Wikipedia if you want more information about Brunhild and the Ring of the Nibelung. I'm not an opera fan, but I am a folklore fan, so I know it from that. That color's perfect. I know it from the folklore side of things. I pulled this kind of dark orchid. I got a lot of neutrals, but definitely pulling on this kind of these pinky tones and these kind of celadon green tones. So I'm not sure at all where this is going to go. Maybe this will get in there as well, just as a nice swan reference. I do have a large feather stencil, so I'm thinking that might work nicely. I'm thinking I might even layer it to have a couple of feathers in like shades of gray with white on top and build up a little depth. So this might play prominently. I'm going to go ahead and put on some music for myself to listen to. I'm going to tape off my borders, and then I'm going to get started. But before I flip the camera, well, it's already flipped. Before I stop talking, I will remind you that I would love to have you as a subscriber. You can like this channel. You can subscribe to see more episodes of Weekly Spark. Helps the algorithm a lot, just saying. So I would love to have you do all the YouTube things and like, subscribe, even hit the notification bell if you want to make sure to be notified when new content is coming out. I will mention that in the next day or two, I'll be posting the theme, dog hair in my tape. I'll be posting the theme for the month of March. I'm just going to leave that there. There's dog hair everywhere in my house. Since we are going with an animal theme this year, there will be new content, a new book that I'm reading as inspiration for folklore and history and mythology. So look for that video coming up very soon. So for now, did you subscribe? Did you click like? Okay, well, I'm going to shift my focus from talking to working and hope that I see you again next week for another episode of Weekly Spark.